Welcome into Freedom, Play, and Fun, a place where you are here right now enjoying yourself with Maria Appelqvist and Rhonda Liebig. Today, we are so excited to have Lucas Roy Lehman. And I bet you I said that wrong, and so we will find out for sure. And enjoy Orgina Rose, and we'll be right back. Welcome in. And Maria, how are you doing today? It's fabulous seeing you.
Rhonda. I'm good, Rhonda. I'm excited to this conversation we're going to have today about sex, money, and power.
I love that feeling. So let me introduce Lucas. And first off, I find that Lucas has a very infectious personality. I met him locally here in Sacramento, but he's been all over the world, so he's an international person and speaker. And so Lucas has started many successful small businesses, including a $2 million a year import business. And he founded the nonprofit Freedom Within Prison Project, recorded 3 CDs, produced rock musical in LA and in New York City. 2 years later, 6 sold-out shows and 4-star reviews. And Lucas says he's learned from his mistakes. So welcome in, Louis. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So Lucas, what I love about you, as I said earlier, is your infectious personality. And when you speak, I love listening to your stories. I would love for you to step in and talk about your steps into what you're up to today and what's going on.
Wow, it's interesting. What's been going on for me this past summer particularly has been like a season of things falling away. As I was sharing before we started, my marriage kind of abruptly ended in June. I've been on a very restricted diet in terms of trying to repopulate my gut flora, if you will. So there's been like this just elimination of all things toxic, and it's been scary and challenging and interesting. Definitely the more I disassociate from these sort of material things, the more I'm actually experiencing myself as a spiritual being. So it's interesting walking through the world, because obviously the world is very invested in its materialness and what's going on here as being what's going on. And the more I detach myself from sugar, the cycles of sugar in my body and caffeine, and for me, pot was one of my favorite indulgences, and sex and relationship and chocolate and all that. It's like, who am I really? Who am I really if it's not on all these little cycles that are going through me, and to really discover the real spiritual connection where there's peace there.
That's really fascinating, Lucas. And I do think that I think maybe this is a part of, maybe this is a theory I'm having. It's part of leadership, is to actually realize all the materialistic things you're attached to in your life, and it comes to a point where you let go of it and you transition into that space you're speaking about when you're exploring your spirit in whatever means it means to you. But some people, they go to ashram for a while, or a yoga retreat, or detoxing, but it's like a starting new in the discovery of your spirit.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's scary because it's in the sort of yoga ashram thing as a certain thing, because it's outside of normal life in a way. Whereas I sort of feel like I'm walking through the world having a very different experience in the world that other people are doing. My business affords me an incredible amount of freedom and free time and spaciousness. And I just kind of like walk through like, oh, it actually can be kind of easy as long as I let it be easy. And to recognize how much the like how much my little addictions to wanting a cup of tea or a piece of chocolate or all those things are just like, oh, I notice I'm feeling uncomfortable right now, so then I go to this thing to make me not feel uncomfortable. And once I eliminate those things, to like notice like, oh, there's a part of me that's noticing that I'm uncomfortable, and I would typically have a cup of tea right now, but I'm not going to do that. Isn't that interesting?
That scares me. And oh, I'm sorry. I know Maria and I are talking over each other because Lucas is so exciting. Maria, I'm going to let you ask your question. I'll pop it in just a moment. Go for it.
Yeah. So what are you doing instead? So when you're noticing that, and oh, I like to have a cup of tea, but no, I'm not having a cup of tea. What are you doing instead? Is it more about disciplining your mind, or what is there?
Yeah, I think it's just I'm just noticing it, right? And that became the, you know, I challenged from my coach around it, like, again, that there was the piece of me around my relationship with pot. I don't drink, and so pot was like my little thing. And there was a story that I just felt like I needed to clean out from all my addictions, and I was afraid that I was going to be bored, and that life was going to be boring. And we realized that one of my attachments to pot was that it's an amplifier, and that the thing that I liked the most in life was intensity. And so there was this realization of like, well, what's more intense than being bored and looking at, so like I reframed what I was doing. So suddenly the boredom was like, well, that's really intense. Oh, well, I'm choosing that. I'm choosing that as this, right? Because it's all, what difference does it make? So that's been the difference, the reframe of like, oh, I'm doing this as this exploration, as this experiment in what's happening in this moment, and recognizing that all the rest of it is about taking myself out of whatever's going on. And in the book that I'm writing and in all of my experience, the presence is the starting point of everything. So, and to think that I would be spending so much of my time trying not to be present to what I'm feeling, well, then there's no place to move forward, because I'm actually not anchored in this moment. I'm anchored in some future moment. So it's been hard, but it's been interesting for sure.
Oh, excuse me, boredom. I'm hearing it, but I'm also hearing that boredom really is an unusual word right now in this space, because you're finding out that there's no such thing as boredom, and that
Right.
that it's bringing you into your essence of who you are. And that I'm finding to be like what you're almost saying. So I'm going to ask you a moment about your book, but and where that's taking you. But it's very interesting because I'm going through some type of cleanse too in my closet. And Lucas, what you're saying, I was feeling like that every time I was going through something. I felt this uncomfortable space, and then I would feel this flow and say, accept, and breathe into it. And so I'm feeling that from you, and I feel that I'm feeling this movement forward. And so where are you finding that as you're opening up, let's quote unquote boredom, where is this opening up your space for yourself? And I heard this word book in there, so I'd love to hear your direction with this.
Yeah, so I think what the flip side of that is ease ultimately, and realizing how many of these little cycles or drama cycles or whatever that we create to not feel what we're feeling makes our life harder. And again, in some ways you could say if things are easy and flowing, well, that's boring, right? Even when you know, even like I'm a writer, grew up as a literature major or whatever, and every story requires conflict. And so we're kind of programmed, we want to tell interesting stories, and that's all ego attachment. So again, it's this dynamic of, do I want to identify myself as a human being having a spiritual experience occasionally, or a spiritual being having a human experience, the spiritual being, there's actually a lot less to say in a way. There's a lot less stories about going on, and that's also becomes a challenge, because it's like if you go on a trip and everything went smoothly, how was your trip to France? Oh, it was great. We went to some museums and we had a nice time. Well, our ego wants to be interesting and tell a story, and the stories are usually the plane was delayed, they lost my luggage, the taxi driver was a jerk, we were kidnapped. Like all these things that create an interesting story are actually contradictory to what creates a easy flowing spiritual life.
It's true. You're actually having a point there. I think being in that ease and flow is so out of people's comfort zone because they're used to being in conflict and pain and feeling like victims. So it's going into that flow and that ease is uncomfortable because they're not used to it. So when they hit it, they think something is a problem.
Right.
That they try to solve by doing something.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also there's a surrender required, right? To get into flow is really a recognition that there's energies that are way bigger than me, and I'm just a particle that wants to be in the flow of the river. If I want to think that I am all special as my one little bitty particle, well, I can do that, but I'm gonna less is gonna get accomplished. And that's the other piece too of moving into the spiritual ease way of life, is that there's less that we actually need to make happen. Again, our ego likes to make things happen and then check off little boxes and say look what I accomplished, as opposed to if I just show up present with an intention of love or whatever, things take care of themselves so much more. And it's only when our egos then get in the way to try to take credit for it that things get all gummed up.
And you're bringing up an interesting point. I really love this space right here, because in leadership, I'm seeing you stepping in with the ease and the flow, and things will happen. And in this space, so it seems to be easier to find areas that you may be stuck in, then as you're clearing out your space and being able to really be aware of what's working for you and the things that you need to let go so you can keep with the flow. Have you found overall in life and business that the flow is happening in a quicker, nice flowing way as you are learning about where you're stuck so you can do the clearing?
I would say yes and no, because there's a great book by Gay Hendricks called The Big Leap, and he speaks to what he calls upper limiting. And so there's a sense of like, as I start moving into ease and faster ease and flow, it feels uncomfortable, and there's a part of me that wants to sabotage it and do things that I'll out myself. Like I was feeling really good the other day, and I didn't have anything to do Saturday night, so I was like, oh, you know what? Pot's legal now in California. Oh, I'll pick up a little pot and have a puff, and play some music, which I really enjoy. And I recognize even as I'm doing it, I'm upper limiting myself because my system is now getting so clean and so sensitive that I'm going to feel like crap for 3 days afterwards. So for 2 hours of pleasure, I'm now like 3 days of just like slogging myself out of the toilet, and like, okay, when am I going to stop doing that? When am I going to stop sabotaging myself? Because it's like the ease is unfamiliar. We're used to struggle. I'm used to struggle. I'm used to striving. And if I'm not in that, there's that part of me that wants to bring myself back into my comfort zone, even if it's uncomfortable. It's ironic, but that's what we do.
And I'm also hearing is that we're getting so used that our body is toxic. And when our body is toxic and having addictions, or maybe it can be like even so easy having caffeine or drinking wine
Right.
every day,
Right.
but it's you're constantly toxic, it means you're not really capable of having all these sensations and feelings.
Right.
And I want to go into that, like that sex power thing, because I think there is a correlation here. So can you
Well, yes.
get it?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. When obviously it's a pithy title for my book, 7 Principles of Sex and Money and Power. But just to be clear, when I say sex, what I really mean is actually much larger than sex. I mean, basically kind of second chakra stuff of it's intimacy, it's shame, it's creativity. It does include sex, but it's way bigger than just sex. And then money is really about prosperity, and prosperity is not just financial prosperity, but it's also physical prosperity is in there. And then regarding power, my definition of power, personal power, is my ability to manifest my desires with ease. And the most important part of that is the ease part. We're always sort of looking at manifesting my abilities, my desires, but it's actually the key to personal power is what's my experience of ease in this moment and this moment and this moment. And then I might find that the things that I thought I wanted to manifest were actually my ego story, not the ease of what does spirit really want to have come through me. Why am I here? What am I in service to? It's actually not to my ego. It's to something else. My eternal self, my higher self wants something, and I don't know exactly what that is.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're on discovery, and you're talking about holistic stuff. So when you put that out there, sex, love, and power, it sounds so exterior, and I love how deep you're going into what each component means. The sex part is something I find so interesting because it's such a beautiful flow, high energy, frequency, and I love that even throughout shame, because there's no such thing as bad or good. Once you open yourself up, it is pure authenticity. Then opens you up to that higher space, which really drives you in that flow, and not feeling like you're pushing, but feeling like that it's really happening. And so I feel that is like one of the biggest components, because it's the first one, but you have 2-3 big pillars there of things that a lot of people have problems with just in general space. Could we talk a little bit more about the sex area and where you're going with that in the flow in your book?
Yeah.
In business too, I bet.
Yeah. Well, so again, it's about what I'm looking at in the book is really what are the principles that underlie moving easily in those sort of 3 major departments. And so like I said, the starting point for everything is presence. Whether in a sexual situation, if you're going in with an agenda, then your likelihood of failure is very high. If your agenda is, I'm going to show up here with an intention to love my partner and have this be an experience, in a kind of tantric sense, as opposed to, well, I'm going to go after my orgasm and make sure she gets her orgasm. That's a recipe for disaster. Likewise, in terms of money, if my objective is like, it's about getting more money, no, it's about prosperity, which is a feeling of expansion, and you can have that no matter how much money you actually have in the bank. So to really drill it down to what are the core essences of these things. Our ego wants them to look a certain way, but where we get frustrated and why we fail over and over is because our ego never gets it right. Our ego never satisfied. We can, look at Donald Trump. He's got millions and millions of dollars, but he's a miserable human being because underneath it all, it's all from a place of insecurity. So that's what this exploration is about, or what are the key principles to actually bring us into alignment with who we really are, which is these spiritual beings having a human experience. And then that changes everything. Then, because the universe, when you live in that way, the universe will make sure you're okay. You might not have $1 million home and a Porsche in the garage, but you certainly will be able to have shelter, love, food, transportation. The universe will make sure everything happens that needs to happen for you, but that's more a matter of, you know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's about the listening. It's about, I don't know, and let me breathe and let what spirit wants to have happen.
That's really, I love that. I love that explanation. And you were saying that the title of your book was The 7 Key Principles?
Yes.
Could we have some hint of what they are?
Yeah,
Presence,
sure.
Presence is the first one.
Present, purpose.
Purpose.
Passion, prosperity, playfulness, proactivity, and plasticity.
They are all starting with P.
Yes.
Just in case you didn't know.
Can you, I think we understand them all, but the last one, plasticity.
Plasticity, so yeah. Like if you think of plasticity is about, to me, like neuroplasticity. It's about trying new things, novelty, so the ability to try and fail, to create new neural pathways, creativity, if you will, is all in that plasticity.
Being open, so you can change your neuron.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And as you've been going through this journey, I am seeing that you are working to be in this flow and consistently. And I love the word that you threw out there, because I hear it quite a bit, is that sabotage word. And you're working on clearing that new flow, and it's so easy to sabotage ourselves. When you're in that flow and you're clearing that sabotage, tell me some successes that you're feeling. It could be with the clients that you're working with. It could be just in success you're seeing in the world around you. I'd love to hear some of that freedom, playing fun while you're in that flow, because we've definitely been talking about the struggle, some ups, but let's bring it up a little more. I know, Lucas, you've been experiencing some wonderful things too.
Yeah, I mean, again, certainly with clients is where it shows up is the easiest for me right now, because I feel like I'm going to go backwards for a second. So for the longest time, I was a musician and a writer and an artist and all that. And there was this sense that like I needed to prove something, or something was going to happen for me because I was special or something like that. And ultimately, there's no there. There's the satisfaction doesn't come. The next bigger reward, it's just like, and because it was about me. And as opposed to now, most of my work in terms of creativity is instead of it being music or writing, it's in the realm of human potential is now the medium that I'm working in. And I get to show up in service to that. And so I get to see those transformations all the time. I get to see my clients, letting go of their stories. And I don't have another CD to put on the shelf. I don't have a book to go like, aren't I special? I just have to, like, there's a humility there. Like the more powerful I get is in direct proportion to how much I recognize it's not me doing it, that I'm just the vehicle for it to come through me.
That's and that's the transition I'm hearing, is also when you're leaving the ego, you're stepping into the being of service as a leader, and there's the very find the flow, and there's where you're being of service in a new way. So the clients that come to you, what kind of struggles do they have? What is the major problem they're having in this area?
Yeah, I think the clients that I'm most that kind of fall into my niche sort of fall into two categories. It's usually men who are successful and are in relationship, but there's a dissatisfaction that they sort of sold out their souls in a way. They sold out their power to their partners or to their jobs or whatever, and that they're really looking to find out, like, who they are now and find their own confidence that's internal. And then I also find myself on the flip side kind of with women who are maybe in their 50s and 60s and haven't been in a relationship for a long time, and aren't even sure if they want to be, but recognize that something got turned off in them. Their life force energy, their creative energy, their sexual energy, oftentimes in reaction to, relationships that didn't work out, or there are no good men out there or whatever, and that they're looking to reignite themselves and their own goddess for their own purpose, whether they want to be in a relationship or not, but to bring their light into the world and find, I guess they're both kind of the same thing, right? Of finding what's my inner self, what's my truth. And usually men are looking for something out there, and but it's ultimately the same thing. It's this like, how do I listen to who I really am, and especially who I really am, not from an ego place. Like, that's sort of a confusing thing. Who I really am is not my ego and the I am.
I feel that flow in where you are going and how you're able to open the space for people that are discovering what all this means. And in this point in the podcast, we love the being able to give some steps and strategies, like from all this stuff that we've talked about in this wonderful space. What do you think, Lucas, and Maria, I bet you have some ideas too, in being able to leave us today and feel like there's some strategies that they can step into that'll make them feel like they're still connected and moving forward?
Well, I'm thinking where we actually started, like looking to what is your addiction in lives? Like, where do you have your addictions? And what does it mean if you let go of addictions, or try it out for a while to see what really happen with your physical body?
Yeah, I would jump on to that and to really look at addiction in a broader sense. Addiction doesn't mean shooting heroin in a street alley. What I'm calling addictions, I was speaking to earlier, of this noticing of like, so that, I'm feeling like I'm procrastinating right now, so I guess I'm going to make a cup of coffee to give myself the motivation to get through my procrastination. That's actually an addiction, that you're not feeling what's really underneath that procrastination. What's the fear under there? Well, I don't want to write this newsletter because ultimately I think it's not going to be any good, or no one's going to read it. That's what's true. And to touch that point, that painful point, and clear that, one, you don't need a cup of coffee, and two, the newsletter that you're going to write from that place is actually going to land, versus the one that's coming from a fear-based place driven by caffeine. So I think
feel that, Lucas. I feel that. I feel raw in a most beautiful sense. I feel the motivation of, if you are taking in something to help elevate or step you away from the emotion, sugar, caffeine, stepping away from that space of thought. How can people find you to keep their movement forward? Where would you like to direct them?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, the easiest way to find me is Intimacy Makeover might be the easiest way to remember. So intimacymakeover.com, or my name, Lucas Roy Lehman, Lehman is how you spell my last name, lucasroylehman.com. Either one, that brings you to my website, and just, contact me. There are a couple of free things on my website that you can download. Would love to talk to anybody who's inspired by this conversation.
I know for sure I'm inspired. Maria, how are you feeling today?
Me too. Yeah, of course. Because I'm also into the sex man empower thing. So I'm totally aligned with this conversation. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Lucas.
Thanks. Can I there's one last thing on the previous conversation that I just wanted a little footnote.
Yes, please.
In terms of addiction, like to notice how I think eating is really the primary thing. When I think eating is this really magical thing where somehow we're turning a plant or an animal into consciousness. It's actually miraculous. And so often we're not actually present to the miracle of like chewing and the juice that's in our food actually becoming ourselves, that we're watching TV or looking at our phones or whatever. So I think the first piece is, how do we begin to create more space to come into presence? And there isn't a more wonderful place to do that than with food. So like, notice how often you or somebody else talks with food in their mouth. Like, that's almost like it's disrespectful to who you're with. It's disrespectful to your food. Like, what would happen if you actually just chewed your food? And then, so that's like to create those spaces for something, because everyone feels completely jammed, overwhelmed. There's not enough time. There actually is.
Lucas, you're singing to my soul. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Enjoy Argina Rose. Make sure you step in and learn more about Lucas, and you have an insightful day.
Just focus and trust.